What is going on, everyone? Matt here for GR Weekly on a Thursday morning with a strained neck. Thank you, Nate Polvolt, for cursing me on that one, a joke from yesterday. But man, it's been a little while. We took the week 12 off for Thanksgiving. We had some stuff go down yesterday night, so I do have to push things to today. So bring me today and tomorrow. And I'm excited to be back. I'm excited to be talking some football. I'm not excited about this strained neck I'm dealing with. I don't know what's going on. I caught the old. I'm hitting that age, I guess, where everything just starts falling off the rails. But we got a few games to talk about today. A bunch of injury news because it wouldn't be football without shifting lines and changing players and making sure your lineups aren't set until the exactly last moment. So we got like 7-8 games to talk about today. We're going to kick it off though with Dallas versus New Orleans. Dallas favored by 4.5, 47.5 point over under. That line should probably move because we did get news. We're going to have Alvin Kamara and 2 offensive tackles missing for New Orleans Saints. No matter what you think of Taysom Hill, who still technically has not been named starter unless that has changed in the time frame the last few hours with the news of Kamara being out. This offense, I think, is just in a weird state, and there's really not going to be much I can recommend for them outside of probably Mark Ingram. So in terms of my preferred running backs in this game, it would go Elliott, then Ingram, and then Pollard. If Ingram is going to receive the amount of work he's had with Kamara missing, then at the very least, I do think Dallas's defense has played very well this year. I don't have to tell you that in Week 13. We've seen them perform well. We've seen them keep teams like Kansas City under 20 points in their house. Dallas does struggle. They struggle on Thanksgiving, but I think against a New Orleans team who is not particularly bereft of weapons, they don't have a very they're missing, all of what made them special last year with Taysom Hill starting, they don't have that, right? So we don't have Sanders, we don't have Thomas, we don't have Cook. So Kamara's, Kamara obviously missing as well. So Taysom Hill's numbers from last year when he started, I don't think is acceptable to use to really forecast what he can do in this game. Mark Ingram, Deontay Harris, Marcus Callaway, these are whatever they may be. But Ingram is going to be the only one I can recommend. He's a low RB2 option. Hill is going to be ranked. I've seen him ranked close to the top 12, if not in it. I think that all should change now with the other rankers over on fantasypros.com. But for me, I'm not recommending him someone you can start. In terms of quarterbacks, let's say you have Aaron Rodgers, right? Because there's 4 teams on bye this week. You got the Cleveland Browns, Carolina Panthers, Green Bay Packers, and Tennessee Titans. Cam, we missed, we were out for all week 12. That include the review. Cam getting benched, so you probably weren't relying on Cam. Tannehill, there's no one there in Tennessee anymore. And you probably should not have been using Baker Mayfield. But let's say you don't have Rodgers, right? You don't have Rodgers and you're looking for quarterbacks. And you picked up Taysom Hill because you thought you were going to start. You thought this was going to be a fun situation to get some rushing yards, right? Because it's really what we're looking for with him. Tua Tagovailoa, Taylor Heineke against the New York Giants and Las Vegas Raiders, respectively. Jimmy Garoppolo, Derek Carr. These are all quarterbacks outside my top 12 who I think you should be available in your leagues. But Carson Wentz, Kirk Cousins, Joe Burrow. If for some reason you got those guys, these are all inside my top 12. These are not players who were being routinely rostered. Outside maybe Carson Wentz 4 of his last 6 games with 20 points. I think that's a good spot for him against the Houston Texans. But Taysom Hill, that's a sit. Mark Ingram, the only player from New Orleans I can recommend as I rub my neck because, again, Nate Polvolt cursed me. I don't know what's going on with my neck. I've hit the old. But over on the Dallas Cowboys side, there's a lot more to like here. And now, on Thanksgiving, they were without Lamb for most of that game. Cooper was out. We're going to be actually without Cedric Wilson in this one. And Ezekiel he's been banged up, right? There's really not much to really talk about more than for Elliott in terms of what's wrong with him. He's hurt. He's been playing banged up, the knee, the hip, the everything. He takes a lot of hits, takes a lot of punishment. We're seeing that with a lot of running backs. We lost a lot last week. Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, DeAndre Swift. Week 12, really brutal for running backs. A lot of teams just got knocked out of playoff contention in fantasy leagues across the landscape because of those players being removed from their rosters. But so we're going to indeed have Cooper Kupp active. It looks like we're going to have CeeDee Lamb active as well from the concussion. He's turning this into, they're both listed as questionable. It looks like they're going to play. Elliott is quoted from owner Jerry Jones of having a large load coming for him in this one. I believe when I see it, in a sense, they've been very much stating that they have the benefit of having Tony Pollard. They don't have to give so much work to Ezekiel Elliott with these long NFL seasons now. But Elliott, this is a good, not a good spot for either running back at the very least. He's outside my top 12. Tony Pollard is my least favorite of the running backs in this game. He's inside my top 24. I think I'm going to move him down. This is the number one run defense in terms of fantasy points allowed to opposing backfields. 18 points is on average how much they give to the entirety of the running back group. That's not the RB1. That is RB1, 2, 3, whoever is going to get in there listed as a running back. This is the worst matchup you can have in the NFL currently for a fantasy standpoint. So for the whole lot of them, I'm not saying that they are great plays at running back. Receiving game is a little bit different. If they're going to have their full allotment of weapons, I do like Dak Prescott. If he has Cooper and Lamb, I think that's still a very good duo. Dalton Schultz. Also, I think there's going to be more of a lean to their pass game. They need to get things right with a little bit of the hiccup they have had, dropping through the last 4 games. I don't really think that New Orleans is going to be able to fully stop every weapon they have on the field. I don't know if they're going to have any of the ceiling games. I do think this is a good Saints defense. There's a reason why this line, even with this poor offense, was so close. It should hit, 6 points maybe now, maybe 5.5. But I do think it's going to change a little bit of what the overall dynamic of this game is going to be without Alvin Kamara to be competitive on the other side of the ball. So for right now, I do think you can really, rock and roll with Lamb as a top 12 near option. Cooper has not really been that same sort of player. He's in my top 24. If there's any sort of limitations, I'll adjust before game time. But I think you should start your Cowboys. It's pretty much the long and short of it. Tampa Bay versus Atlanta. Tampa Bay favored by 11. I believe that's the highest spread on the week. Nope. Rams 13 versus Jacksonville. Gross. 15.5 point over under. This might be, bad or worse than that week 2 drumming that the Buccaneers lined up for Atlanta back in week 2, 48-25 in that game. Or maybe better. Who's to say? The Falcons have been a weird team lately. Tampa Bay, though, all in good spots. Falcons top 10 option for quarterback, running back, and wide receiver in fantasy points allowed. Tight end points allowed is not a thing. Do not listen to that garbage. It is mostly a circumstance of the core of the tight ends you are playing. Certain teams have good tight ends that are featured in their offense. Most teams have tight ends that are not featured in their offense. So I believe it's the LA Chargers have played, everyone under the sun that's good. They have Waller and Kelsey in their division, Fant in their division as well. They've played Andrews. The Chargers are going to look like one of the worst teams against tight ends because of just who they play at tight end. Stop using that stuff. That is garbage analysis. But some spots for Tampa Bay has been focused since the week 2 matchup. For one, Brown was doubtful, is now out. There was Ronald Jones was somewhat being involved in the offense, now is barely being used in the offense, although he did score a touchdown last week. Fun. But Evans, Godwin, and Fournette, Gronk, right? Those 4 options plus Brady, all in very good spots. Leonard Fournette is a weird one because of the 4 touchdowns, and this is a very good spot for him. He's going to be in my top 12. He should be in most people's top 12. Start him. He and Gronk, I think, are easy. And, of course, Brady. But the receiver is a different one. I think Godwin and Evans, to me, are just weekly ranked too high. There's actually going to be a piece coming out for fantasypros.com that I contributed to saying that Chris Godwin, and it could have been just used Mike Evans, but Godwin was ranked higher, that they are going to be consistently just overranked, and they're going to disappoint. There's not been a single week this season where you can go in saying it is specifically the Evans or Godwin week, or they change whose big week it is seemingly as it goes. Last week, Leonard Fournette, 4 scores. Cool. Rob Gronkowski was the leading receiver for the Buccaneers. They're going to have their great games, right? Godwin, 3 games of 100-plus yards. Evans, twice. And they're down games. You have Godwin, 7 games of 70-less yards. Evans, 5. Right. So technically, the one that's been a little bit more consistent has been Mike Evans. The one who's been a little more boom or bust has been Chris Godwin. They've both getting ranked inside the top 10 is just a mistake. They're very good wide receiver 2s, but since they're not focused as hyperly as some other receivers that are towards the top, or they're not scoring as often, Adam Thielen is a better option to start than these guys. They're in a great spot. Minnesota is that's the Detroit game. Minnesota isn't just as good a spot, and Adam Thielen, Tight ends touchdowns are a very, very hard stat to really say on a week-to-week basis is have any sort of consistency. But for Adam Thielen, that's kind of all he does. He scores a ton of touchdowns. I was going to curse, save that, but they're all good options. You're going to start them, but the ceiling game, one of them is going to have it. Is it Fournette? Is it Gronkowski? Is it one of the receivers? It all makes some very good starts, but comparing the wide receivers to the other crew of guys, they're wide receiver twos because there's a chance for them to disappoint if the other guy does well. So if you have Evans and Godwin, congratulations, you're going to have a good receiver out of one of them. If they both go off, that would be something that's new. But otherwise, really just kind of wide receiver twos for them, great starts for the rest of them, on to Atlanta. Congrats for Atlanta for really crossing 300 yards for the second time since week 8. They've had a real trouble getting offensive production ever since Calvin Ridley has decided to step away from football. And it took versing the Jacksonville Jaguars to do that. But beggars can't be choosers. Patterson and Pitts is a short answer for Atlanta, and the long answer basically as well. I'm worried that this is a trap scenario for the two. Tampa Bay is just a bit of a better team than Jacksonville. Again, first team that they've had to cross that 300 yards total threshold. Don't start literally anyone else. Just period. Pitts, this is really funny. One red zone target, Dave Richard from CBS.com was one to point this out since week 8, which is just a chef's kiss to the whole situation. Pitts with more weekly finishes outside the top 20 than inside the top 12. 5-4 is some pain. That is a Matt special. Philadelphia versus New York Jets. This is there's a few games where it's very much straightforward. You know who you're going to start and you know who you're not going to start. If Hurts is active, great. He's an amazing start, and he's really the best, undoubtedly, start of any player in this game. And the rest of the team is fine. Goddard, he's fine. Smith, fine. Running backs spot. They should be good. This is one of the best matchups in the league for running backs. But the best rusher for this team is Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts has a chance to really rush for like 80, 90, 100 yards in this game if they let him. But that's to be said. He is technically questionable. I do think he's going to play, but they're all fine starts. Jets. Zach Wilson rushing score and Austin Walter, whose name I just learned last week, were the only other fantasy contributors for the New York Jets last week against a very easy Houston Texans matchup. The Eagles, I think, have been a pretty solid defense, all things considered. Moore has been great with the last month, but that came without Wilson under center. This game stinks. Both backfield stinks, unfortunately, without Michael Carter. Hurts, Goddard, Smith are my favorites. And if Philly ever wants to give Sanders his due diligence, great. I don't like this game. This is a bad spot. I think the Eagles' defense isn't a good one. But it's really tough for me to trust any of the Jets with Wilson under center. He is just not good for fantasy right now, and it's understandable. I'm kind of giving the Jets a pass. Like right now, they're in line to get 2 top 5 picks because the Seattle Seahawks are terrible. 2022 that's the whole idea for the New York Jets. I called them a trap last week on Twitter. Follow me at Methodical Ones on the bottom of the screen. Said the Jets were a trap. They were a trap. That team, that entire game was stinky for basically everyone but like Brandon Cooks. And Brandon Cooks is the only player from Houston we ever say to start whatsoever. Both defenses were great. I started the Jets in a lot of spots, so gross. Arizona versus Chicago. Arizona favored by 8, 45.5 point over-under. Fresh off the bye, we hope that we have the return of both Murray and Hopkins. If they are indeed back, this game does get interesting. If not, then we're stuck with it, basically kind of a total snooze fest. Murray, Hopkins, and the Cards DSTs are the real standouts. Connor is a very solid option. He was doing a lot of the production without Murray, Hopkins in the starting lineup. Also without Chase Edmonds. He should be out this week. It looks like he's going to be back next week from IR. That will change the whole dynamic of that backfield undoubtedly. But 76 touchdowns was a workload count from Connor to week 9 to 11. He's at RB2, not RB1 in my book. Chicago just about neutral and for earning back points allowed. There's no real benefit from having a matchup against the Bears. They're just kind of fine in that regard. But all the Cardinals options, tasked with being active outside of Edmonds, they're just really bland for fantasy options, underselling their league best 9-2 record. Hopkins has exactly one top 10 finish this season in full PPR. And I think that's really because he has no games with double-digit targets. The real difference from Hopkins from this year to any year he's ever played is that he's not getting focused down like he was and just accumulating stats through volume, right? So 9 such games in 2020 did he have double-digit targets. Awesome. And then only 1 season of the previous 4 did he have less than 8. So we're going from 8, 9, just lock that in for double-digit targets to just 0 this season. And we have Rondo Moore and AJ Green and Christian Kirk. And Christian Kirk would be my favorite of the group. He's been actually a very quiet wide receiver 2 this year. I think most people aren't really kind of hinting on that. Of the funky bunch, Hopkins would be my top 20. Kirk would be my top 30. The rest of the guys, they're fine. They're all fine. Zach Ertz as a tight end is a little bit of a difference maker, but they all really cannibalize each other, and it's just such a mosh. And because they have so many options, it's great for them as a team. There's never going to be a locked-in number 1 option that they're going to be playing any sort of down. You would like to think it's Hopkins, but Hopkins has routinely not been, the best receiver of this team in the weekly production because it feels just very random. And fantasy football is random because of the touchdown counts. But it's random and very noticeable part with not being able to account for those targets that were able to really give him a nice floor to work on. So for me, Murray and Hopkins for sure starts. Kirk, I think, is a flex. Cards DST is, I think, very good as well because Chicago, Montgomery and Mooney are going to be the go-tos, but this isn't Detroit. I'm very worried that Arizona just dunks on Chicago this game, and this is a tough spot to recommend really anyone, just kind of like the Jets. Mooney is going to take a massive hit if Robinson is active. It looks like he's not going to be, which is good because Darnell Mooney has just been what really we saw in the past from DeAndre Hopkins, which is just an accumulation of stats. Mooney has done so. 24 targets last 2 games, 122 yards average. 16 targets got him there in week 11 versus Baltimore. If he gets, the 16 targets type again, it doesn't matter how bad the matchup is. He's going to get there. He's a near RB wide receiver 2 option, and you can pull Brandon Ayuk, Mari Cooper, DK Metcalf, Brandon Cooks, Mike Williams are the players I currently rank ahead of him. They're better players than I think Darnell Mooney is. Do I think they're going to get 16 targets? No. Maybe Metcalf if they ever just change how their offense works. But Darnell Mooney is a good start. Possibly a bad result. But him and Montgomery, you're going to play, and you're just going to hope that they do enough with them. I believe Andy Dalton is going to start this game as well. I don't think Justin Fields is going to be out there. But that's something I think I would prefer. He's getting the last note I have here is he's getting the starting reps on Wednesday ahead of the matchup against Arizona. So as of right now, Andy Dalton looks like he's going to be on the start. He's really favored Darnell Mooney. If we have Justin Fields in there, this is even worse for them, but it doesn't look like they're going to be rushing back to go to Justin Fields anytime soon. Charge for Cincinnati. Cincinnati minus 350.5 point over run. Man, for not talking for a week like this on stream, your voice, man, you have to get back used to it. This game seems to rule on paper as my Xbox controller drops on the floor. On my desk here. There's a few just super straightforward plays. I don't need to tell you to start Eckler. I don't need you to start tell you to start Allen or Mixon. They're great, especially Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon has been freaking awesome lately. And again, the other 2 charges have been great, but Mixon has always been a very point of contention. I believe he's inside my top 5. This is one of the best running back matchups in the league. Austin Eckler and Joe Mixon are back-to-back for 2 and 3. Taylor, Eckler, Mixon, Fournette, and Najee Harris are your top 5 this week for me at running back. But start both quarterbacks. We seem to do that past the bad performances from Herbert, who goes for back-to-back 20-point games first time since I believe it was like week 5. Yeah. The whole offense has been struggling. We know this by now, but him and Williams, 4 receptions per game for the last few is great. The less than 40 yards in 2 of those, not great. But Williams has been tricky. We know about this in the past where he'll have his big games and he has a whole bunch of stinkers. And all just seemed like all his big games came right at the beginning of the year. His upside is undeniable, man. Like the Chargers have just really rolled with Allen and Eckler being such big forces for them. And he just kind of exists as an ulterior option. If they ever want to feel like getting him involved, they can do so. But right now, why would you take the ball out of Keenan Allen or Eckler's hands? They're so good at what they do, and they're so good at moving the ball downfield. Williams is just more of a risky sort of play, and I don't think for them it's entirely worth just getting him involved if it's just operating so effectively for the Chargers. Now, the Cincinnati Bengals defense, I do think is good. There's a reason they are favored. It's not just because maybe they're home, but the Bengals, that dismantling they had of the Pittsburgh Steelers last week, this is a legitimate team. Now, the AFC is very tricky. One week the team looks great. The next week the team looks awful. The only team that's looked very consistently good for about the last month and a half has been the New England Patriots. And for fantasy purposes, that doesn't really mean too much to us. But I think this game here, I think is going to be very good from both sides of the ball, Cincinnati and the LA Chargers. But we need to then move from the very easy plays to very tricky plays, which would then be the receivers for Cincinnati. So since week 8, go through the game totals for these 4 receivers. You have Chase, Higgins, and Boyd. Higgins is leading receptions at 18. Chase leading in targets at 35. But Higgins is double, whatever. He's combined of what Higgins, Chase, and Boyd have done in terms of yards. 304 yards for Higgins. Chase, 152. Boyd, 142. 2-1-1 in Chase's favor in terms of touchdowns. Now, there's a shot that we're collectively ranking Higgins a little bit too low and Chase a little bit too high. And I'm going to get a little... I'm going to try and go with what the trends have been, right? Jamar Chase is going to come in as my wide receiver 10, and I'm going to have Higgins around wide receiver 16. And I think I could tweak that a little bit further. And I don't want to say Higgins over Chase. Chase has just been such a lock with Joe Burrow. He's been such a good force for most of the season. He's just had a little bit of a downturn. It's going to happen. He's still a rookie. But as of right now, Higgins is really picking up steam, and Jamar Chase is still performing well as a fantasy start, but not to any sort of the measure he was early in the season. But I'm going to, push both of them to be starts. This is not particularly a great matchup, though, against the LA Chargers secondary. Boyd, just a flex. In terms of the tight end, CJ Uzomah, a sit. Jared Cook, a sit for me. Minnesota versus Detroit. 2 games left on the docket. Minnesota -7, 46.5 point over under. Battle of the waiver wire pickups in this one. Madison in a great spot. In weeks past when he needed to fill in, top 7 finishes in both weeks 3 and 5. Start Madison with great confidence. He is an awesome start against the Detroit Lions. Keeney Nwangu. I might be right. I might be wrong. Who the Minnesota coaching staff said will get involved in some regard. What that means, we will find out on Sunday. But if you missed out on Madison, who should have been rostered, there was a few leagues where I saw him not on teams. That was surprising to me. He should have been rostered anyway, but if he wasn't, and if he was not available, pick up Nwangu if you have a free spot. I don't know what that particularly means, but Dalvin Cook ain't coming back. Probably this. A week 2, 3, who knows? He might not come back this season. I have no faith in anything at this point. But Cousins and Thielen and Jefferson, all a top 10. Thielen in particular, he earns a top 10 spot. That he has currently 10 touchdowns, 14 last year. 30% of his production is currently coming from scoring. Just in line what he did last season as well. I avoided him going into the year. I'll probably avoid him next year. But ride the wave. He just keeps on scoring in 2021. Cousins and Jefferson, I do think are in very good spots, particularly Justin Jefferson. I still always really look at how the Eagles took Jalen Reagor over this guy. And Justin Jefferson, I'm going to very much enjoy watching play football for the next decade. He is very, very good at football. Lions, just Williams and Hawkinson, and which it's the same thing it's always been for the Lions, which was just Swift and Hawkinson. Now it's Williams and Hawkinson. And there's a real danger that Swift won't return this season as he due to miss a few weeks. And this being a winless team, it's got a tie. There's almost no incentive for him to play Swift at all. This is a lost year. They've had a few games just not go their way. It's not like they're getting completely blown out. This is not an absolutely pathetic team. The Lions, there is some hope for them to, win maybe like 5 games next year. I didn't like them going into the year. I set the over-under at 2.5. I took the under, and so far I'm looking pretty good on that one. But Williams, if he's going to see the receiving work that we do see of DeAndre Swift, cool. I don't think he's going to be playing to the same sort of potential, but I do think there's at least sort of a, hey, if you picked up Williams or you had him on the bench and you could put him in, he's an RB2. He's fine. He's good. The Minnesota defense is not anything scary. It's just a matter of, I think their offense is just going to absolutely decimate the Lions. But I do think that this is going to be a spot where you can have Williams and Hopkins in your lineups and be pretty okay with it. Indianapolis versus Houston. Indianapolis -9, 45.5 over under. The Houston side, start Cooks. Don't start anyone else. Cool. Indianapolis, Taylor and Pittman, just amazing starts. Wentz in the top 12, and I think deservedly so. He had a little bit of a dip versus Buffalo and Jacksonville. It was really just a measure of how good Jonathan Taylor has been for this football team. 20 points, 20 points in 4 of the last 6. Carson Wentz he's been good. And no one's ever going to give him credit for it, but he's been good. Flyers for me on T.Y. Hilton and Jack Doyle, both in good spots to score if you're stuck. But the main 3 and just Cooks on their side, which is just, the perennial only Houston Texan I recommend. Even last week, that Houston game seemed like such a trap because you had just 2 super bad offenses going against each other. And when you have just, when the offenses are that garbage, the defenses seem even better. And that team, that entire game, it was, I think the best fantasy starts that came out of it was probably the Jets and the Texans defenses outside of Brandon Cooks. And with that, going to wrap up this preview. I'm actually going to be live again later today, helping out the guys over at Front Yard Fantasy with a little bit of their answering questions. So if you like what you saw here, you can always check out those guys over there in the Front Yard Fantasy. It's going to be around like 4 o'clock, 4:15 or so. If you want to come in and stop by and say hi. Otherwise, if you enjoyed what you saw here, cool. Like, subscribe. Make sure to follow me at Methodical. Make sure to follow Gridiron Ratings at Gridiron Rating, no S. And later on tonight, you have Getting Defensive with Gary and the crew doing all the IDP needs. If you have, that is the spot to go to if you need all the defensive stuff, which I don't do. I do offense and a little bit of defense is when the Arizona Cardinals are playing the Bears. But otherwise, check them out for all your IDP needs. And the slate with Kyle over on the weekend if you're looking for stuff over for DFS purposes. Otherwise, with that, I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to see you guys tomorrow at 7:30 the normal time. Everything is shifting around a little bit. Finals weeks coming for me. Today I didn't have class because it was the last day for my Thursday class wrapped up on Tuesday. So a little bit of weird stuff going forward. Times may change. Might have more availability to do some more work with the semester for me ending in the fall. And with that, have a great Thursday night game if you got players going. Hopefully more Cowboys than Saints. And we'll see you tomorrow.